Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you an acid damage focused Draconic Sorcerer build in Baldur's Gate 3. Now the silly thing about the Draconic Sorcerer is the only acid damage spell they get is Chromatic Orb. However, I found a method to be able to get all 5 different acid damage spells on the Sorcerer here, as well as use all 6 pieces of the acid gear in the game. So I'll be showing you all of that in this video, starting off with level 1. We're going to go with, you got a choice here between the Copper Dragon, which gives you Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is my preference. And then there's also the Acid Dragon, which gives you Grease. Both are really good spells, honestly. Grease is probably going to be better earlier in the game. I just like having the Tasha's Hideous Laughter here. We're going to go with, for cantrips, we're going to obviously be taking Acid Splash here. And this hits in a small area. It has a dex save, so don't expect to land this often in the early game with the Goblins. We're also going to take Booming Blade. Friends, since if you're the face of the party, if not, take something else. Mage Hand is really good because you can have it throw acid vials, I guess, at the enemies. And we'll use another green color damage with Bone Chill, which can make the target stop receiving healing for a turn, which is really nice. For our spells, we're going to take Chromatic Orb, so we actually have the only acid damage spell that the Sorcerer gets, and we'll take Shield for some survivability. And for our ability score spread, I think it's best to go with a stat spread of something like this. Now, we do have to do a slight multi-class in order to get the most out of this build, so you can either dump your dex and put those points into your intelligence. Adding in the Wizard allows us to learn a few extra acid damage spells, and we can actually mix this 6-6 to give ourselves a really good split here, which I'll show you guys. If you are in Act 3, you can actually dump your Constitution and use the Constitution limit. That'd be the most useful stat spread here, but you can use the previous stat spread if you don't. Level 2 spell, I'd recommend grabbing Magic Missile. This is just sometimes good to be able to hit an enemy. Unfortunately, Ray of Sickness is poison damage, and it's also a very bad spell. Meta Magic will take Distance Spell so that we can land our Chromatic Orbs a little bit further in the early game. And then Twin Spell lets us twin our spells, which is great with things like Haste. So that's really our role until we can add in some of the other acid damage spells, as Twin to Haste is a really good support skill. Now, what we got here at level 3, we got Hold Person and Scorching Ray. So a couple of really powerful options. There's also Shadow Blade if you'd like to go with a melee focus. And we do have an acid damage weapon that we can use, but there's a little asterisk that we'll mention a little later on. Hold Person is my personal preference at level 3 here. It's just great, again, supporting our team. And Quicken Spell for the bonus action spells, which is really nice. Once we get to level 4 here, we're going to take another cantrip. I guess we'll take the final green numbered spell here with the Poison Spray one. Firebolt's probably the true best. And again, if you're the face of the party, take Friends. We'll then take, for our next level, Cloud of Daggers for the guaranteed damage is pretty fun, or Scorching Ray. And Scorching Ray is actually good because once we get the Hat of Fire Acuity, we can get ourselves maxed out, plus 10 to our spell save DC, which is really nice. But you can also go with Misty Step, Mirror Image, and again, Shadow Blade is a good choice too. Now, I like to take the Alert feat. However, there is one really interesting feat that we need to take here, and that's the Dual Wielder feat. We can actually take this a little bit later on. I'd recommend the 2 feats here be Alert and Dual Wielder, or Alert and Ability Score Improvement, or Dual Wielder and Ability, I guess two of the three here. But the reason we want Dual Wielder is we want to wield one weapon and another staff. That gives us some bonuses to our acid damage. So I would recommend actually taking Alert at the start here, but Dual Wielder is also a good one because you can open up some pretty cool combinations with a staff and a sword. Now at level 5, we get access to some pretty powerful spells. Again, Haste being a really good one. Counterspell also being nice, again, fitting into our support role. I like to take Lightning Bolt too, just to give us some actual damage, because otherwise upcasting Chromatic Orb can probably get a little bit tiring, and it's nice to at least have something else. But Counterspell is another good choice too. It's between those two if you want more defense or offensive focus. It's really a tough choice here. Level 6 gives us the Elemental Affinity and damage, so we can add our Charisma modifier to our acid damages, which is only going to be like a +3. It's not huge, but it's something. it's something. We also can then get resistance to a damage type of our choosing, and I'll recommend taking, again, Lightning Bolt's really good here. Haste is another nice choice. We just struggle with our damage output, so we have Fire and now Lightning Spell too in addition to this. Now level 7, this is when we're going to add in the Wizard. And with this lets us take a few more spells here, so we can grab, I guess, Toll the Dead, Firebolt, and we'll take Friends if you're not already taking it. And then for the spells we'll take at level 1 here, we got a lot of what we already want. I guess we'll take the Find Familiar spell there, Long Strider to buff up our team, False Life for a little bit of extra health, Thunderwave for the pushback. Not sure why Shield is saying that we don't have Shield here, but we can also then grab like the Disguise Self, I guess, Ice Knife if you're silenced. I'll throw in Ray of Sickness there just for the extra green spell, and we'll prepare the following spells there. Now, once we get ourselves to level 2, we get to take a subclass, and I think that the best choice here is the Bladesinging, because there's actually a lot of items that buff up our melee attacking, and this is the only way to be able to get a melee attacking spellcasting hybrid build, which you're going to see. We can also get Hunger of Hadar here with a specific staff. So at level 2 of the wizard, we'll then, I guess we got all the spells we already need. Mage armor, I should mention, take as well. We'll take the rapier there, as the rapier is the best weapon that you can get here. Level 3, we then get to take another choice on level 2 spell. I'd recommend having Misty Step for sure. And Melf's Acid Arrows. This is another piece of the puzzle. One of the few acid spells in the game, and unfortunately this one is not accessible to many. It's only the wizard and the land druid that gets this. Not the most powerful spell, again, mentioned, but just nice, again, for the thematic purpose to have that have that spell. We'll take Minor Illusion too, because we got Acid Splash. You can do a cantrip bomb on the enemy there. We'll then take, I guess, Darkness, because it could work well with Darkness theme, and the Mirror Image for the increased armor class. And for prepared spells, we'll always have the Melf's Acid Missile there. And then for this feat, I'd recommend taking, again, Alert, or you can go with a boost to the Charisma modifier here, because this will actually increase the amount of damage that we add onto our acid damage spells. But I think that having Alert is really valuable too, so that we can go first, as Acid can actually give the enemy a -2 to their armor class, which will let our other teammates hit their spells more frequently. Now, we got one of our final, actually, acid spells here with Glyph of Warding. This is something that the sorcerer doesn't get access to, but we can get on a wizard. And then I'd also recommend having either the Haste spell or Fireball. Haste being a really good support style spell that I'd recommend having on here. And then we'll go with the selected spells there. Also, you can use Find Familiar Raven to blind enemies. Now, here is where we got a choice. If you want to lean heavier into the spell casting, go into the take another level of the sorcerer, which gives you another sorcery point, and then we can take another spell like Ice Storm here. Although you can learn anything you want from the wizard with the spell scrolls, you can learn them. I'd recommend actually going the 6/6 split here to give yourself the extra attack feature, which is really nice because there's a ring that adds 2 acid damage onto our attacks. We then can take things like Fireball, and I guess Animate Dead's kind of funny. Stinking Cloud matches the color, doesn't do any acid damage, but it works. I really wish, if you're using the level 20 mod, take another level and go Eldritch Knight Fighter. That's just going to be nice because we don't have weapon proficiencies to use one of our weapons here. I'm also wearing the Luna and Umbra armor mod from Nexus Mods. So we got ourselves a full acid gear here. So the Caustic Band, which will make our weapon attacks deal additional 2 damage. The Icarus Gloves here, which will, whenever we deal acid damage, we inflict noxious fumes on the target. This will make the target take a 1d4 of acid damage every turn in there. What's also cool is we have another ability to apply this. We also got the Varsh Koku's Boots, because we're going to be taking that acid damage, unfortunately, if we're doing any melee attacks. This gives us resistance to acid damage. The one time where we can actually use this and make it feel okay. And we also get the Flesh Melter Cloak. So whenever a creature deals melee damage to the attacker, they'll take a 1d4 of acid damage, which then procs that, which makes them take a 1d4 of acid damage. Kind of funny. Also, the Ballast Armor on here. There's no real best armor. You could use, if you didn't want to use the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, you could use Mage Armor. But since we have that on, we got to go with some type of light armor. And this is just, unfortunately, the best one. You could alternatively also throw on the Helldusk Armor. I think this one actually fits well for here. Just kind of thematic, I guess. Fire burning, acid burning. I don't know. It gives you resistance to burning, so... And we also have that Helmet of Arcane Acuity there, because if we use an arrow of many targets, this will actually proc that extra 2 damage there on multiple enemies and then give us max Arcane Acuity, which is pretty funny. Now, the weapons give us a pretty funny interaction. So there are 2. We don't have the proficiency in this. This sucks. That's why I mentioned the fighter, but the unfortunate thing is then you either miss out on your Charisma modifier on the extra acid damage, or you miss out on the extra attack. I'd probably prefer taking 1 level of fighter over the sorcerer, but the Corrosive Flail here, whenever you miss an attack, you deal damage. And the Corrosive Flail will actually have a special attack that lets you deal extra acid damage. But since we don't have our proficiency here, we can't use it. This isn't really good either. I'm just going to mention that. It does reduce the target's armor class by 2, and it adds additional 6 acid damage, or at 4 from our proficiency bonus onto the 2 we already deal. It's not really that good, and again, we can't use it, and it's only per short rest. So one funny thing, though, is the Flail of the Ages here. So whenever you have this out, it'll also have like the acid condition, chilled condition, or burning condition. But what we get is the elemental age here. So one funny thing is you can actually, if you're on an evil playthrough, use Shar Spear of the Evening here. And what we can do is then take this here, the elemental age, and go ahead with the acid version. So the corrosive age here lasts until long rest. You can buff this up, go ahead with it. And what's funny about that is then it goes ahead and applies on our main hand weapon. You can only do this by using the dual wielder feat. So I'm going to use the Sharp Spear of the Evening. I did mention the Shadow Blade. Thaler Alluve Longsword also works. And then we're actually going to swap off and then use Mark of Heshker in our offhand. What's funny is we keep that 1d4 plus 2 acid damage. So free acid damage. And then if you want to be even crazier, what you could do is then pull out your bow here and then just make sure that that's our main hand weapon. and take a teammate with the Drake Throat Glaive, which also has that elemental weapon here. And then you can go ahead and add extra acid damage onto your bow attacks. It doesn't work the same as it does apply. It would override the melee attack. So now we have that 1d4 bonus acid on there and also on our bow. So kind of funny. Although we're not really going to be using our bows, it's just an option. But the big thing now is with Marka Heshker, this gives us the final piece of Exodia here. We're actually able to get Hunger of Hadar. So this is the only way that we could possibly make this work. And why this works really cool is we keep our level 6 spell slot. I did practice a lot with some different Warlock variations of this. But with our Kreska's Favor here, we can go ahead and apply an interesting version with the Sizzling Cataclysm. I don't pretty much never do this, but your acid damage will deal additional acid damage equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's a +4 acid damage on top of that. And then even furthermore to this, we get a level 5 Hunger of Hadar, which functions exactly the same as a level 3. I don't know why they upcast it, but we do get a level 5 Melf's Acid Arrow. So this is actually going to be a pretty useful damage option. So here we go. We have all the acid spells with Acid Splash, the Sinking Cloud doesn't count, it's Melf's Acid Arrow, the Chromatic Orb, the acid version of it, and then on top of this we have the Glyph of Warding here, which has that acid version, 5d8, and then Melf's Acid Arrow, Upcast, and Hunger of Hadar. Our melee attacks do acid, our bow attacks do acid, all of our weapons are glowing green. We are glowing green. This is the most acid you could possibly put into a build. I should also mention that the Knife of the Underbound King would be a good weapon here. Rhapsody would be a good weapon as well. Because with this, you can't actually properly blade sing, which may or may not be a problem. We already have 24 armor class here. I guess our heavy armor doesn't actually prevents us from doing that. But what we'll start off with here is I set up some acid barrels just for the thematic purposes. But we got a Melf's Acid Arrow, and I have targets that I want to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and I guess we'll just target this target here. I want this one gone. So we'll go ahead with casting our acid spell there. And you can crit with it if you wanted to. 46 damage, that melted them into a puddle. Perfect. So now I think it's best to use a melee attack or a weapon attack here. We're going to use our arrow many targets, which does a 1d4 plus 2 acid damage to every target that it hits. So we're going to try and bomb their back line here with this target here, hopefully spreading around that acid condition and damage to multiple targets. This one here has the noxious fumes for 3 turns surrounding them, which is perfect. We could also, I guess, go with a melee attack here as well. Since we do have the Edge of Darkness and the ability to see in darkness, what we could do is actually a pretty silly interaction here. So we get advantage on this attack, we attack them, we have darkness set up, and what's cool is darkness and acid will actually stack similar to ice. Darkness doesn't mix with fire, but it will with acid. So you can see there's an acid condition there on the ground. They're also wet now too. If we had an extra way to deal some cold or lightning damage, that'd be perfect. I guess we could use a twin spell. I'm going to keep it thematic though. We're going to go with another type of, I guess, acid damage. We'll go with a Melf's, or no, we'll go with a Glyph of Warding Acid, because this can actually be some pretty crazy damage here. And we'll upcast that to level 4 here, and we'll just set it right down right there. So hopefully someone will come over and walk onto this right here and trigger this and hopefully blow that all up. And we'll see. Oh, no, they're smart. And they took a bit of acid damage there, and they will have a -2 to their armor class as well. So they were smart. They avoided it. So we're going to try and draw them this way. Now, the thing with Melf's Acid Arrow is the range is so small. It's kind of similar to your Acid Splash range, so you're not going to hit things very consistently with it. Stinking Cloud's kind of cool, though, I guess, on theme with this. And we can always drop another Glyph of Warding if we feel like our last one failed. The Chromatic Orb is also not the biggest area of effect either, so yeah, we can hit many targets here, but we're hidden and invisible. So the nice thing is we get that extra attack from the Bladesinging Wizard, so we can actually just attack at any point. 60, 70, we got a 70% hit chance, we'll attack them. Spreading the noxious fumes now to, I guess, multiple targets. So they'll now be taking, sorry Shadowheart, they smell pretty bad. But yeah, they'll be now taking that extra damage. What's great though is we can do, if you have haste up, you can hit multiple attacks against the enemy. And then afterwards, you can then use a bonus action spell. So it's kind of the best way to do that. Fortunately, my arrow mini targets did not hit there. But I want to try and drag the enemies this way. So we're just going to leave it as that. I'll go ahead, I guess, with a... we could drop... No, it's not going to hit enough targets. Not really worth doing it. So I guess we'll drop our Hunger of Hadar here finally. Maybe we could do Hunger of Hadar back over here. Yeah, we'll try this. So it's going to force them to move forward. Yeah, let's do it this way. So Hunger of Hadar there. They're now all locked up. And then we got our bonus action Quicken spell here, using up the last of our sorcery points to then hit away with another, I guess, Glyph of Warding. We'll go with it. And we'll do the acid version, which can maybe hit We'll try and hit 3 targets. Yeah, we'll go with the Glyph of Warding Acid there, which will actually explode, dealing the damage there. I guess that was worth doing because that took out a couple extra targets. Now, they'll take the cold damage that they started their turn and the acid damage at the end of their turn there, which can end up breaking their concentration twice. I love the shield spell, just gives you so much survivability. And those noxious fumes are pretty nice because it's a little bit of chip damage every single turn that could potentially break a concentration. I'm just going to go with another arrow attack. I know it's not really the theme of this build, but we need to take out these targets here. We're not getting high damage, but all the extra damage providers are doing just enough. And we don't even have proficiency in this weapon. We also get an arcane battery charge, which is nice because this lets us go ahead with something crazy, which is Glyph of Warding. That's the only option we have. The 8d8 edition, which now is going to do some pretty good numbers damage, so I'll throw that down right there. It'll blow up and then hit them with some acid damage. That was enough to take out 2 targets and then summon in some more, so that's great. We'll then apply, I guess, our acid damage to multiple of those targets, so we'll do an arrow many targets again. That was in multiple noxious fumes there. We actually got some good green number damage there. And we have a bonus action, which we can't really do much with right now because there's no targets to do our melee offhand. So we'll just attack this acid barrel just for the fun of it, making us immune. We're immune to acid there, but we still took a bit. The thing took damage. Hunger of Hadar is a really nice spell on here. Even though it doesn't get any upcasting ability, it's a great crowd control. I'm not sure what happened with these barrels, just exploded on him and he survived it. So what we're going to do is make sure he don't survive it with arrow of many targets. That's really our best pick right now. He's blinded, so that just went through and automatic advantage on the attack. I got to get these tough to hit backline. I can't run back there, so I'm just going to shoot some arrows at them. Again, not the best choice, but this is the way that we're dealing the most amount of acid damage, so it works. And another attempt at spreading some more noxious fumes around. We got Fairy Fire off. I'm using, I guess I should mention, the Hellfire Longbow for the +3 initiative too, so that makes sure that we do go first. And then I guess we do, if you have Illithid abilities, you could drop some of those down. Black Hole being pretty fun because you can then group them up into your acid or into your Hunger of Hadar, and it'll slow them too. And there's our Hunger of Hadar exploding and taking out a target, which is great. I love Hunger of Hadar. It does do so much great damage, especially with the noxious fumes. Like, there's a lot going on there. Yeah, they're suffering. They don't even know what to do. They're frozen in their action. Yeah, they oddly froze for like 5 minutes there and didn't make an action. So I think that was the game getting confused with all the acid damage that it's never seen before. Yeah, we're kind of in an issue where we can't really hit the target, but arrows will always work if you don't want to cast away with acid splash. That extra attack from the Bladesinging Wizard really is nice on this build because that opens things up so we can do some melee damage. But yeah, that's pretty much everything acid related all combined into one. Made it actually pretty decent. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch you all in the next video.